Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najima Luima, but first are the headlines.
National Resistance Movement celebrates 34 years of liberation as Museveni promises security in the country. National Unity Platform President Robert Kyagulanyi meets his party-elected members of parliament. One person shot dead in post-Entebbe mayor elections. Also today, Central African Republic scores of rebels killed as tensions rise. And in sports, Uganda Hippos draw in Group A. These and more stories in our bulletin.
Now the news in detail. One person has been shot dead in post-Entebbe mayor elections. Let's have more on this story.
Protests have broken out at Central Market along the Old Kampala Road by NRM and DP supporters after the Entebbe Electoral Commission officers declared independent and NRM-leaning candidate Fabric Rulinda as the winner of yesterday's poll. The protesters say by 12 a.m., Rulinda was in the third position with 2,825 behind NRM's Kabwama Mutebi with 5,257 and incumbent DP's Kayanja Paul with 5,672. They said they were surprised when returning officer Tolbert Musinguzi, who announced Rulinda as winner with 6,252. Upon deployed to calm the protest, the SFC fired live bullets, killing one Eric Cheune, the chairman NRM Chitumbulu Katabi, and injuring two others.
Moving on, the Democratic Party spokesperson Olala Amano Opio says that Liberation Day is no longer for all Ugandans, rather for NRM members. DP also denies the electoral results published by the Electoral Commission. Let's have more on this story.
Today, Uganda marks the National Liberation Day. The main celebrations were scientifically held at State House Entebbe, and President Museveni was the guest of honor. However, the Democratic Party, through their spokesperson, denies the celebrations, saying it's only for the NRMs and a few people. Opio says many Ugandans are still facing challenges, including poverty, unnecessary killings, and abductions.
People who are liberated, and yet there are those who are still languishing in pangs of utter poverty. We have those that are languishing in pangs of utmost terror, inhuman and degrading treatment meted against them by the state. We have those that are still languishing in pangs of actually not realizing that they are in their country. We are being treated as if we are secondary citizens in our own country.
Opio also commented on the general elections that they were not free and fair.
We saw grenades being thrown at candidates. We saw people being shot, hundreds dead, many incarcerated. We have seen presidential candidates put on bulletproof jackets while campaigning. We have seen a day prior voting, the day of voting, and a few days after voting, jet fighters hovering over the skies. We have seen tankers crawling on the ground. What other definition of war does one need other than what I have just described? What happened was actually not an election. And the same is the reason why we actually refuse, reject, and repudiate the results.
Basing on the electoral circumstances happening in the country, DP has ruled out Mao's move to resign if the party doesn't raise 10 MPs and above.
If he doesn't work, of course, in conjunction with the Democratic Party, to raise at least 15 members of parliament in a free and fair election, he shall definitely resign. As you are aware, what we got involved in our opinion as DP, was not an election. It was basically war. But this was not free and fair. Therefore, the president of the Democratic Party is vindicated. He will not be resigning.
Moving on still, 2 Ugandan nationals have been arrested at Indira police and 9.8 kilograms of heroin worthy shillings 2 billion seized at an Indian airport. Let's take a look.
According to India's Customs Authority, the weight of the recovered narcotic drugs is the biggest they have ever seized at any airport in India. The 2 Ugandans, who are in their 30s, are suspected of trafficking the drugs through Entebbe International Airport. India Customs authorities say that while searching, they checked in bags of the 2 passengers. A total of 51 pouches containing 9.8 kilograms of white powdery substance suspected to be narcotics was recovered. The suspects told India authorities that they were given the bags by their sister in Uganda and that they didn't know that narcotic drugs had been concealed inside. A person found trafficking narcotic drugs from outside India into the country faces not less than 10 years imprisonment and heavy fines that are determined depending on the quantity of the seized contraband. Our efforts to get a comment from the spokesperson of Uganda Police Force, Fred Enanga, on whether their counterparts in India have informed them through the international police organization Interpol about this case were futile. The number of Ugandans arrested in India over trafficking of narcotic drugs has increased. 2 female Ugandans were arrested on New Year, while 1 male Ugandan was arrested with 500 grams of heroin in December 2020. Recently, the Director of Criminal Investigations, Ms. Grace Akulo, said trafficking of narcotic drugs by Ugandans is affecting the country's reputation in the world. Ms. Akulo said countries with high cases of passengers found with illicit drugs are subjected to extra searches at the airports. She said Uganda law enforcement authorities are taking crime-related incidents involving Ugandans seriously. In 2019, Uganda registered 2,000 Ugandans who had been trafficked to India. Only 16 of the victims were rescued, according to Ms. Grace Akulo. Most Ugandans trafficked to India are used in sex and illicit drug trade. Heroin is produced in Asian countries and trafficked to Uganda, which is considered as a transit country for narcotic drugs to Europe and the United States of America. Police often intercept drugs being trafficked out of the country, but not those that are brought in. It is still unclear how such drugs are brought into the country. According to Uganda police records, they handle on average 2,700 cases of narcotics annually. In 2019, police destroyed seized illicit drugs worth 5.5 billion shillings. These drugs had been seized in 1 year.
Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. In our health news today, students went back to school on Monday in Mali after the government officially authorized their reopening and the resumption of classes, which saw several delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's take a look.
In Mali, not everyone sees the move in positive light, as although the government has provided masks for the students, some teachers deplore a lack of disinfectant products and soap for land washing. Many others doubt the ability to uphold social distancing guidelines in crowded classrooms. Since yesterday, there has been a distributing of masks because the state has sent us a large number of masks for each child. Not only in public schools, even private schools have received them. Mali has officially registered some 8,000 cases of COVID-19 and more than 320 deaths. Many parents and school staff are concerned about these figures rising. Hamidou Kolibali, treasurer of the School Management Committee of the Lassa Basic School, appears a bit frustrated with the situation. According to residents, the social distancing is not easy at all because there is only one public school and there are too many students, making it hard to manage classes. They pleaded to government to build more classrooms so that they get more space. Malian authorities also announced the resumption of culture, artistic and tourist activities from Tuesday, as well as reopening of culture infrastructure and places of recreation.
In our business news today, the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank Group and in coordination with the League of Arab States, hosted a high-level webinar tackling many issues. Let's have more.
The webinar gathered high-level officials and partners and country representatives, where the discussion involved around the success of the first phase of AFTIAS program in 2014-2018 and the way forward in regards to designing and implementing the AFTIAS 2.0 and the important role it will play in view of COVID-19 negative impact on intra-trade among Arab countries. The webinar was inaugurated by Dr. Banda Haja, President Islamic Development Bank Group, Dr. Kamal Hassan Ali, and Assistant Secretary General for Economic Affairs at the League of Arab States, and Engineer Hani Sani Sonbol, CEO, International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, and Chairman of the AFTIAS Program Board. During his remarks, Dr. Banda Haja, President ISDB Group, pointed out that Islamic Development Bank gives great importance to trade and believes that AFTIAS will act as a catalyst for cooperation between Arab countries and organizations that will undoubtedly contribute to achieving comprehensive and sustainable development in the Arab region, relying on trade as a driver for development, job creation, and prosperity. Also in attendance was Dr. Nevin Gami, Minister of Trade and Industry of the Arab Republic of Egypt, who shared how Egypt has benefited from the first phase of AFTIAS and the country's expectations for the second phase. Dr. Gami pointed out that Egypt contributed proudly to the establishment of the first phase of the AFTIAS program, believing in joint Arab action. She also confirmed that the Arab Republic of Egypt has resolutely contributed to the design of the second phase of the program, as it hosted in October 2019 in Cairo the workshop. Dr. Kamal Hassan delivered a speech to the effect of continuing to support the General Secretariat of the League of Arab States, the second phase of the AFTIAS program, and seeking to promote it at all levels, believing in the importance of the program in the Arab joint cooperation and aiming to achieve Arab economic integration. It is worth noting that the webinar witnessed the participation of many heads of relevant Arab organizations and a number of ambassadors and permanent delegates of the Arab countries to the World Trade Organization, the Economic and Social Council contact points for the League of Arab States, and the AFTIAS.
In our international news today, the Egyptians who took to the streets on January 25, 2011 knew what they were doing. They knew they risked arrest and worse. But as their numbers swelled in Cairo's central Tahrir Square, they tasted success. Here is a report on how Arab Spring exiles look back 10 years after Egypt uprising. Still in international news, the government of Central African Republic says 44 rebels in the Central African Republic who were trying to barricade the capital Bangui and overthrow the authorities have been killed by forces. Let's have more.
Police forces backed off, and within days, former President Hosni Mubarak agreed to demands to step down. But events didn't turn out the way many of the protesters envisioned. A decade later, thousands are estimated to have fled abroad to escape the government of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi that is considered even more oppressive. The significant loss of academics, artists, journalists, and other intellectuals has, along with a climate of fear, hobbled any political opposition. Dr. Mohamed Obol Jait was among those jailed in the southern city of Assiut in 2011 after joining calls for revolt against police brutality and Mubarak. He spent part of the uprising in a cramped cell. Released amidst the chaos, he reveled in the atmosphere of political freedom in the Arab world's most populous country, protesting, working as a journalist, and joining a campaign for a moderate presidential candidate, but it did not last. In 2012, Mohamed Morsi, a member of Egypt's most powerful Islamist group, the Muslim Brotherhood, was elected as the first civilian president in the country's history. But his tenure proved divisive amid massive protests. The military, led by then Defense Minister el-Sisi, removed Morsi in 2013, dissolved parliament, and eventually banned the Brotherhood as a terrorist group. A crackdown on dissent issued, and el-Sisi won 2 terms in elections that human rights group criticized as undemocratic.
Let's once again take a very quick short break. We will be right back.
Famed writer and educator Chinua Achebe was born Albert Chinalumungu Achebe on November 16, 1930 in the Igbo town of Ogidi in eastern Nigeria. After becoming educated in English at the University of Ibadan and a subsequent teaching stint, in 1961 Achebe joined the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation as Director of External Broadcasting. He could serve in that position until 1966. Prior to joining NBC, in 1958, Achebe published his first novel, Things Fall Apart. The groundbreaking novel centers on the cultural clash between native African culture and the traditional white culture of missionaries and the colonial government in place in Nigeria. An inflicting look at the discord, the book was a sterling success and has become required reading in many schools across the world. The 1960s proved to be a creatively fertile period for Achebe. It was during this decade that he wrote the novels No Longer at Ease 1960, Arrow of God 1964, and A Man of People 1966, all of which address the issue of traditional ways of life coming into conflict with new, often colonial point of views. And Hill of the Savannah 1987 took on a similar theme. In a related endeavor in 1967, Chinua Achebe and Christopher Okibo, a renowned poet, co-founded publishing company the Citadel Press, which they intended to run as an outlet for a new kind of African-oriented children's book. Okibo was soon killed, however, in the Nigerian Civil War. 2 years later, Achebe toured the United States with Gabriel Okara and Cyprian Ekiwesi, fellow writers, giving lectures at various universities. The 1960s also marked Achebe's wedding to Christ Chinua Okoli in 1961, and they went on to have 4 children. When he returned to Nigeria from the United States, Achebe became a research fellow and later a professor of English between 1976 to 81 at the University of Nigeria. During this time, he also served as director of 2 Nigerian publishing houses, Heinemann Educational Books Limited and Nuoko Ifejika Limited. On the writing front, the 1970s proved equally productive, and Achebe published several collections of short stories and a children's book, How the Leopard Got His Clothes, 1973. Also released around this time were the poet collections Biaware Soul Brother, 1971, and Christmas in Biafra, 1973, and Achebe's first book of essays, Morning Yet on Creation Day, 1975. While back in the United States in 1975 at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, Achebe gave a lecture called An Image of Africa, Racism in Conrad's Heart of Darkness, in which he asserted that Joseph Conrad's famous novels dehumanizes Africans. The work referred to Conrad as a thoroughgoing racist, and when published in essay form, it went on to become a seminal post-colonial African work. Achebe joined the faculty at the University of Connecticut that same year, returning to the University of Nigeria in 1976. Chinua Achebe won several awards over the course of his writing career, including the Man Booker International Prize 2007 and Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize 2010. He also received honorary degrees from more than 30 universities around the world. Chinua Achebe died on March 21, 2003 at the age of 82 in Boston, Massachusetts.
Welcome back once again. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. In our sports news today, the draws for AFCON Under-20 were held on Monday afternoon, indicating the CECAFA region champions placed in Group A alongside the hosts Mauritania, Cameroon and Mozambique. However, the head coach Molibie Kwaso is optimistic and believes his team will progress to the knockout stage.
The coaches are doing all their best as it takes for us to be on shape for the final competition in AFCON 2020 as we have qualified for it. That is going to be in Mauritania. As me as a player, I'm also praying and working hard. Sure, I'm very well ready to work and to come as victorious, and my dream is for us to qualify.
Uganda Hippos was eliminated by Cameroon in the 2018 AFCON Under-20 qualifiers on penalties after both legs had ended in 1-1 aggregate. Hippos are the champions of CECAFA region, and this is the first qualification to the AFCON Under-20 finals. Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories.
National Resistance Movement celebrates 34 years of liberation as Museveni promises security in the country. National Unity Platform President Robert Kyagulanyi meets his party-elected members of parliament. One person shot dead in post-Entebbe mayor elections. Also today, Central African Republic scores of rebels killed as tensions rise. And in sports, Uganda Hippos draw in Group A.
That was the news. Thank you for always tuning in to TV Africa News. Please stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.